Again, good day everybody who joined us. Thank you for joining. We will start the webinar right now. I see other people logging in as well, but I'll go ahead in wake of the time that we have. Thank you for joining AppEnsure's webinar on how to be proactive in addressing Citrix user complaints. I am Sri Chaganty, CTO and founder of AppEnsure. We are glad you were able to find time to join us today. Today in this webinar, I'll present to you the innovative approach that AppEnsure took in addressing often neglected but a very key success factor in Citrix environments, which is true experience of the end users that are actually your real users. Be it be applications that you're publishing or VDIs you deliver as a service provider, ultimately it is the satisfaction of those consumers, that is the end users, that you're interested in. During this webinar, it is my intent to make you understand on how AppEnsure empowers you to be proactive to common end user complaints you face every day in your environments. Before we get started, allow me to outline how this webinar is structured. We designed this webinar to be highly interactive. There will be 4 polls during this webinar, each lasting 1 minute. Each poll will be for a minute, and I'll share the results of the poll with you all at the end of each of the polls. This webinar is not about slideware. Our target is to limit the webinar to about 40 minutes of presentation and demo and have 10 minutes of Q&A. Our demo will be use case driven rather than trying to explain each and every feature of our product. You can type in your questions in the chat box and I'll address them at the end of the webinar. You can get a detailed demo if intrigued by this webinar by going to our website www.appensure.com and requesting for a demo. Finally, after the webinar, there will be a survey of 2 questions. Your participation in the polls and the survey will make this webinar more two-sided than an one-sided sales pitch. I request you to please participate in polls and survey. So let's start with a brief introduction of AppEnsure. We are a Citrix invested company and also backed by venture capitalists, headquartered in Silicon Valley, California, established in 2012, and the product is a result of 15 plus years of consulting practice before embarking upon productizing that experience. We released our first product in 2014 and we had worldwide deployments in 2016, and the deployment spree is continuing as we enter into 2017. Our focus is operations and not development. When I say that, what I mean by that is that when you talk about application performance management, most of the times people talk about code instrumentation and people talk about tools like AppDynamics, New Relic, or Dynatrace that require access to the source code so that you can code instrument your applications that you're homegrown. However, majority of the enterprise applications that you get from vendors will not allow you that kind of code instrumentation. So when you take the homegrown applications or vendor provided applications into operations is when you face majority of issues from your Citrix end users. And that area of really providing the application services to the end users in operations is the focus area of AppEnsure. With that, let me launch the first poll of the 4 polls that we have today, and I'll give 1 minute. Please do participate in this poll and let us know how many tools do you have in your environment that you're using today for monitoring your Citrix silo, as well as the delivery, not only just the delivery, but the entire visibility that you have. At 30-second mark, I have about 50% of you participating. For others, please do participate in the poll, because as much as this is about AppEnsure, this webinar is also about sharing your experiences with others across the industry. I'll be closing the poll in about 5 seconds. And now let me close and share the results with you. What we are seeing here is very typical of what we have seen across the industry, and as well as with this group of people who are attending this webinar. For those who participated in the poll, you typically have about 1 or 2 tools in the environment, and about 1/5 to 1/3 we've seen having no monitoring solutions in place and relying completely upon Citrix, and the others are basically using more than 1 or 2 tools. So this is something your peers in the industry are telling you, and this is something that we've seen with our earlier service as well as to what the spread of the monitoring tools are. So let me hide and get back to my presentation and move on. Typically, the common end user complaints that you see are one of these, where they complain about the applications not launching, the VDIs not being accessible, or the applications being slow, or sessions being dropped, the sluggishness of the entire end user experience is what you probably are seeing, as many of your peers in the industry see. And what we hear commonly from most of the people is that their frustration is when those complaints come to you, majority of the time you do not know about a problem, that there is a problem, unless somebody picks up a phone and complains that something is going wrong. Given that about 80% of the people do not complain, those complaints are coming from 20% of the people, which basically tells you that there is a huge loss of productivity because others are not complaining to you. But the following up on that frustration is that when you actually try to dig down to find out what is happening, the problem, you cannot find the root cause. Sometimes the problem basically disappears even before you start your investigation. And what we heard from most of the people that are in your shoes is that it's always you're on defensive to prove that it is not the Citrix silo that is causing the problem, it could be elsewhere. So constantly you're under the gun because you are the messenger and the last mile in delivering the application or VDIs to the end users, and as a result you're always in a defensive to show that it is not Citrix that is causing the problem when end users are having bad experience. So before I jump into the basics of the solution, let me just focus on how is AppEnsure different. About 50% of you said that you had 1 or 2 tools that you're using to monitor Citrix environments today. And let me draw a picture of how and what AppEnsure is doing that is different from the monitoring solutions that you're exposed to today. When you look at majority of the monitoring solutions out there, they rely upon commodity data. When I talk about commodity data is basically what is available commonly to everybody, whether through WMI, PowerShell scripts, SLMP, or whatever might be the source. It is common data that is available for all the users of the system. And when you take the commodity data and interpret that commodity data, what you're going to be getting is mostly commodity results. What AppEnsure does differently is that there is a unique metric that we collect, and that metric is measured by AppEnsure, and that unique metric is the response time end-to-end, hop by hop, for every application or every VDI that is accessed or used by the end user every time they use it in real time. So the granularity of being able to find the response times and throughputs for every user in real time for every access, we are taking that as a unique metric based on which we are correlating the commodity data that is available and then actually providing the intelligence that you require in order to understand how end users are experiencing what you're trying to deliver to them. Secondly, AppEnsure discovers, correlates, and monitors all the dependent and child processes along with response time, if those processes communicating, for every server in the supply chain of your application or VDI. We do not restrict it only the Citrix silo. The correlation is automatic. So if there are some monitoring tools out there that kind of provide you the process level information, and that information is mostly confined to resource utilizations, then it is basically the responsibility of the operators of that tool to basically dig down and find out a process that might be consuming more resources or that might be sluggish. AppEnsure does it automatically for you. We discover all the dependent services and we monitor those services not only for availability but also for responsiveness. It is some tools out there might be today providing you that there is a dependent service on which the supply chain is dependent upon, but that availability does not mean that the end user is having a good experience if that service is not responsive. Take, for example, Active Directory. For some reason, Active Directory is up and running, but for some reason, Active Directory is being very sluggish on a particular day. That sluggishness is going to reflect in how the end user is going to experience when he's logging onto a system or trying to access an application. So just monitoring the availability will not solve the problem unless we know how responsive those services are and how that responsiveness is actually affecting how an end user is experiencing the delivery that they're getting. We discover all applications, VDIs, users, topology, everything that I'll be demonstrating in the demo is all auto-discovered. There is no configuration required. Zero configuration is required from out of the box. Many of the tools out there, as your experience must tell you, requires configuring many of the applications, configuring the correlation yourself, and which basically means that there is manual pilot errors that might happen in the process of that configuration. When you install AppEnsure, there is no server restart that is required. The AppEnsure solution comes up as a service and provides you the intelligence without any configuration right after it comes into being. Finally, telling you that you're having a bad day is good, but telling you why you are having a bad day is what is lacking in most of the tools today. AppEnsure provides you alerts, alarms that are generated out of alerts, and the root cause for those alarms that have been generated. So this is how AppEnsure differentiates itself from other monitoring solutions that you are aware of today. With that, let me go to the second poll of the day, and in this poll we basically want to hear from you as to what are the common complaints that you hear from your users. Again, as I said, the information that we are sharing with you is a result of the participation in these surveys from your peers across the industry, and as I share this with you, you will be understanding as to how many others that are in the same ship face similar kind of problems that you face today. Please do participate and tell us what are the most common complaints that you hear from your users. We got about 10 more seconds before I close this poll and share the results with you. Well, on the top of the minute, I'm going to close this and I'll be sharing the results with you. As you can see, the sessions dropping randomly or sessions being very sluggish is a majority of you reported as a common complaint that you hear from your end users. And what we have seen in our previous surveys is that this, as well as I cannot log in or my login is slow, have taken the top 1 and 2 positions when we did these polls earlier on. So here, most of the people that are participating in this webinar, 50% of you who participated in this poll have basically said that your common complaint that you see is session dropping randomly or sessions being sluggish. That is the majority problem, and in our demo today I will refer to this one when I talk about how the sluggishness of sessions are manifest and why you do not have the visibility today that AppEnsure can provide. So let me hide the results and move on with my presentation. So in this section of 2 slides before we go to the third poll, I will be focusing on how the unique features that we offer from Citrix for Citrix environments. So in your Citrix environment, an unprecedented end-to-end visibility is what AppEnsure offers. Hop by hop, end-to-end response time from the end user to your Citrix delivery layer, and if you are delivering or if there is an infrastructure that is present behind the Citrix silo that is actually responsible for delivery of applications that are being accessed through Citrix or through VDIs that you're delivering using Citrix. Ability to look at the backend infrastructure as well and see how the backend infrastructure is responding to the requests that are coming from your end users. We auto-correlate the VDI access to the backend, and also for each application and each user for each access, this end-to-end response time and throughput is provided. The other unique feature is end-user-centric diagnostics. Ability to find a single user who might be having a bad experience and pointing out, alerting you on that and trying to find the reason based on the policies that you define or modify that policies come predefined with a box, but if you were to change those policies, you're allowed to do that, to be able to say, why is Mr. Joe Doe from particular geolocation having a longer latency in accessing an application compared to all other users from that location, and being able to alert to you. So even before somebody picks up a phone and gives you a call, you are already ahead of the game, because you already are alerted and alarms are generated, so that you could basically focus on trying to get the problem solved and proactively, rather than being reactive to somebody making a call to you. And we are doing all of this with real traffic. We are not doing any synthetic transactions and kind of assuming that this might happen, nor are we doing any simulations to kind of tell you that in this simulated environment, this is what might happen. These are all things that you cannot actually do in a production environment. Simulations and synthetic transactions are good for testing. They're good for pre-production environments. But when you are in production and running, then you do not have the luxury, unless you're only dependent upon forensics of finding out what might have gone wrong. You do not have the luxury of running synthetic transactions or simulations. What we are doing is based on real traffic and real users accessing real applications in real time. How does AppEnsure address this proactivity might be a question that you might get. So at the endpoints, whether it be delivered applications or VDIs accessing applications that you're providing from in the backend, as these transactions are happening, we are measuring the response time and throughput for each user for every application as the backend. We are basically doing the same thing of the backend response time for every VDI or any published application from the Citrix delivery layer to the backend to try to find out what is happening. As a result, what you get is, based on the response time, you can actually tell how an end user is experiencing the delivery that you're making. And this is done by that unique metric that I'm talking about, but not through interpretation of any of the resource utilizations or any transactions or simulations. So with that, before we go to the last section of the slideware, let me go launch the third and last but one of the four polls of the day. And this is basically going back to the previous section where you complain, you've kind of said the complaints that you hear from your end users, and here we would like you to participate to tell us as to what frustrates you most when people complain. What is the biggest problem that you have when people complain from your side, when you're on defensive, to show that it is not the Citrix silo that is basically is the cause of the root cause of the problem. Now, what is that frustrates you most? So at 30-second mark, we have about 50% of you who voted. Please, others, participate, as I would close this poll in about 15 seconds. Well, I'm closing the poll on the top of the minute, and we'll be sharing the results with you. As you can see, when you actually start, and these results are pretty much in line with what we've seen earlier on. The only differentiator is that the top 3 ranks that we've seen in the earlier polls is that I have no idea until user complains, or I cannot find the root cause of the problem, or the problem disappears before I can debug. And those were the first 3 places, and here the lack of end-to-end visibility is definitely, and of course all of this is based or hinged on the fact that you are ultimately responsible to show that it is not a Citrix issue. And everybody is driven by that, and one way or the other, in your endeavor to prove that it is not a Citrix issue, you're always frustrated because there are issues that you cannot find, or problems disappear, or you have no visibility as to what's happening. So let me hide this poll and continue. This would be the last section of our slide where I want to focus on the basics of the solution. How do we operate? We are an agent-based solution. The agents reside in servers. You can bake an agent in the VDI, in the master image, so all the VDIs that are serviced through that master image will have an agent running in them. You can also optionally put an agent on the endpoint. All these agents communicate with a master controller that we call AppEnsure Master, which has a NoSQL database built into it, and they all communicate one way on these ports using HTTPS. This is an important point because this communication is always upward communication. What it means is that there is no possibility that from our master controller that you could actually dig a hole through to your servers and cause any security concerns. These agents are universal agents. In other words, an agent per operating system is what is required, irrespective of how many applications you're delivering or how many VDIs you're delivering. There is no need for an agent for a Java application. There is no need for a different agent for .NET application or any other languages that you might be using if it is a homegrown application. Well, of course, we have no luxury if it is a packaged application. So these agents, being universal, also self-discover as to which mode they have to run. Do I have to run in a server mode? Do I have to run in a VDI mode? Do I have to run in an endpoint mode? And they automatically discover that and operate accordingly. The agent is a combination of three services that are triangulating amongst themselves to make sure that the service is highly available. As I mentioned previously, there is zero configuration for these agents, and when you install these agents, there is no requirement for you to restart any of your servers. The agents are self-policing agents. Given knowing the fact that we are sensitive as to where we are deployed, especially in the servers, the agents are constantly monitoring what they're consuming in terms of the resources of the servers or on the VDIs that are installed. The agents typically take about 1 to 2% of any of the resources available on these places where they're installed, and the threshold is at 5% if the agent kind of finds out that it is going to be adding more than 5% as part of its working on the resource consumption of these servers, then they will automatically throttle back and go into a safe mode, reducing the frequency of collecting the data and sending the data to the master. Otherwise, the agents typically send about 25 to 35 meg of data in 24 hours. Important factor, these agents are not throwing tons of data onto your network and taxing your network so that you can get the visibility. They're only sending on an average about 1 meg of data per hour. Of course, it all depends upon number of users and applications that you're monitoring, but there is the data that agent sends is very conservative and metadata and not everything that they collect. And also the agents basically, when they communicate with the master, is when they dump the data, they send data to the master every 1 minute. They do not require any disk space on your servers in order to store data. All of the data is being forwarded to the master in near real time or human real time, which is every minute the data is sent to the master. The master has a scalable NoSQL database built into it, which allows us to scale to be able to support hundreds and thousands of agents. We support a hierarchical architecture where we can address hundreds and thousands of agents to a single master. If you're in a large-scale environment, the hierarchical architecture allows us to have collection points, we call them collectors, that forward this information to the master. Highly secure, highly available, the master is, and is a self-correcting and fault-tolerant master that will not in any manner be a impedance in terms of your monitoring environment. Of course, we support all kinds of forwarding of the data that we collect, whether it is RESTful APIs, SNMP traps, email reports, JSON exports, anything, so that if you want to integrate the information that we're collecting into your big data stores, or want to forward the incidents or events generated by AppEnsure to your incident management systems that are in place, we support all of them as well. Now, how do we play against competition? Now, many of you said that you use 1 to 2 tools or more than 2 tools. So let me draw a picture of what you need to have in place in order to get the information that AppEnsure is providing. If you want to monitor the endpoints, you have tools like NextThink Eternity that are focused purely on the endpoint and are going to do with the, in case of eternity, simulations or synthetic transactions to find what is the end user experience. If you want to focus on the network side, you need to have tools like ExtraHop that are basically sucking up all of the information on the wire and trying to tell you how the protocol, give you the analysis of the protocol based on which you have to kind of interpret what is happening with the end user's experience. If you're focused on the Citrix delivery layer, then besides the Insight or directory, if you happen to be a Platinum license holder or bought it, then depending on whether you're using it in Citrix, there are other tools like ControlUp, Goliath, EG Innovations, Liquidware that basically tell you what is happening inside the Citrix delivery layer based upon the resource utilizations, and interpreting those resource utilizations tell you what might be happening there. Again, if you want to see what is happening in the backend infrastructure, there are tools like SolarWinds, IP Switch, or Manage Engine that you have to populate based on different servers, different kinds of agents to populate to get this information. If you decide to go with AppEnsure by putting the AppEnsure agents in the Citrix delivery alone, without populating anywhere else, you get the response time from the end users and the backend, and self-discovers, auto-discovers the applications, users, and topology of your environment. If you extend it and install the agents, if you're allowed to or able to, on the endpoints or on the backend infrastructure, then the visibility AppEnsure provides that takes so many products for you to have in place to get is that end-to-end visibility for every user, for every app or VDI that is accessed. Backend response time, deviations in the backend response time, diagnostics with root cause, and ability to see, as when I demonstrate the demo, you'll see it, to see it from an application or VDI-centric point of view, a user-centric point of view, and a resource-centric point of view. A big differentiator compared to many of the tools that I've put up here as our competitive play, where you are today forced to look at things from purely a resource-centric point of view. Oh my God, my CPU is this much, there might be something going wrong. And what the AppEnsure differentiator, as I said in the beginning, is if you are a great architect and the environment has been architected well enough, if your CPU or memory or disk IOs are high, it does not mean anything for you to worry about if you're providing a consistent service level, a desired service level to your end users. If you want to provide access to your Outlook and the backend infrastructure of Exchange Server, 500 milliseconds every time the user accesses the application, irrespective of the day of the hour, hour of the day, day of the week of the month, month of the year. And if you want to provide that and be able to see if those deviations are happening from that desired service level and quickly drill down to find out what is happening and to find out the root cause, the one and only solution that you have today that provides that visibility is AppEnsure, that can replace many of these tools and provide you that power to able to see that. With that, I'll go to my last poll of the webinar, and please do participate in this. And then in the next section, I'll be giving you the explanation of the demo I have today and the pricing structure of AppEnsure, and would really like to know what you're looking at in terms of your existing solutions. Of course, they're doing a job today, otherwise you wouldn't have them, but there is always scope for improvement. There is always scope for better technologies that come by that you want to look into, and this poll is to basically gauge that interest. We got about 15 to 18 more seconds to go, and please do participate, because again, as I said, when I share these results, you're looking at what your peers in the industry are saying. At the top of the minute, I'm closing the poll, and I'm sharing the results of our last poll of the day. And very typical of these polls that we've seen, you do have some tools in place today, and of course you might be satisfied, but you're looking at new creative and new products that are coming into the market that will address and provide you deeper visibility. And majority of you said that, as you can see, and that is consistent with the polls that we've done. And about 25% to 35% in our polls always say that they're dissatisfied and looking for solutions, and those are the people who do not have any solution today also recognize the fact with Citrix 6.5 on 7.12, there is surely a big hole in the visibility of what they can get today, and they're looking for solution. And these results are in line with other polls that we've done previously, and thank you everybody for being so cooperative and participating in our polls. In this last section before I go to the demo, let me tell you how AppEnsure is priced. In Citrix environment, we're priced is based on number of concurrent users that you have for Citrix. At higher volumes, it could be $1 per month per user, and at lower volumes, $5 per month per user. The servers, where you're going to be putting these agents, at very low volumes at about $50 per server per month, and it could go down to $10 per server per month based on the number of servers that you'll be putting agents on. End points or end devices, if you want to put agents on, very typical like the Citrix concurrent users pricing, $5 per end unit per endpoint if at very low volumes, and comes down drastically to $1 per month per user at higher number of endpoints that you want to put these agents on. And that concludes my slide where now I want to tell you about the demo and what we have in the demo today. So we've chosen an environment where the IT operations is delivering end users, desktops to end users from different geolocations, London and New York, and the Citrix is basically delivering multiple groups, but the focus of the webinar today would be on a couple of groups, the sales groups in New York and sales groups in London. The sales group in New York is delivered with Windows 10 desktops and Microsoft 2016 application and Microsoft Edge, whereas the London sales group is delivered with Windows 8 desktops and Microsoft 2013 Exchange, Outlook 2013, and both of them basically have in the back end the infrastructure where the London users are going into the back end infrastructure where Exchange 2013 is being hosted internally by the organization. You're not going to Microsoft 360 or Office 365. A point I would like to make here is if it is Office 365 that you're going out from these locations, we can also calculate the response time for each of these locations for every time that Office 365 is being accessed. But that's not the use case today, but I just wanted to kind of mention that to you. So this is the environment in which the demo use case that I'll be focusing on today. With that, let me get out of my demo, my slideware, go to the demo, and here I'm logging into the master controller. In the interest of the time, I'm going to go quickly through this demo and the use case. Basically this is the main screen, the boxes that you're looking at, starting from left-hand corner. If you're allowing access to an application via HTTP or web access or any of the 200,000 packaged applications that you have on Windows, any standard application, if we auto discover, they show up here in this box. If you're delivering publishing applications, they show up here. If you're delivering hosted desktops, they show up here. If you're delivering desktops, dedicated desktops, they show up here. This is the number of servers that we've instrumented with agents in our labs and number of endpoints that we've instrumented. So here we are delivering desktops, as we said, to London and sales offices in London and New York. The time frame that you could basically look at all of this information that we provide from a granularity of 5 minutes at summary level up to 24 hours. But as you drill down, you could look at the data from 5 minutes granularity to 1 year or beyond. So when I look at the sales office in New York, I basically see here that they are having from the catalog where I'm publishing multiple images into the sales office in New York, I see alarms. So I basically quickly want to go down there and look at the catalog and see how many machines am I delivering. As you can see, there are a bunch of machines that I'm delivering, and specifically I see that sales office and by 4 and 6 happen to have major alarms, critical alarms. So I would like to go in there and look at who might be the user that is using that particular image. So Kevin is the one. He's getting on an average a response time of more than a second, and I probably might have put the threshold out of the box is 2 seconds on an average. He's not accessing all other applications, whether it's his Edge or Word or Excel that he was using in the last 24 hours. Don't seem to have any problems. It is the Outlook that I basically see that he has major issues. Now that application Outlook here is, now I've provided you a user-centric way of looking at, okay, Kevin is having a problem. And then of course we can drill down into that particular user to find out what else is using, what is happening. But in today's use case, I want to kind of focus on how are you going to be proactive. I've seen this Outlook and Kevin is having a problem. The first thing that you want to look at is Outlook 16. Is anybody else having problem with Outlook 16? So let me quickly go to that desktop applications. These are all the applications that are being published on these images that are being accessed by people from both locations. And Outlook 16, definitely Kevin has 4 major critical alarms, but others also are having, I see 12 of them. So I want to focus going up a level to see it is not only Kevin, but others are also getting affected. So how can I address this? Because there are multiple users that are getting affected. And right there, I see that, okay, NY5 that Kevin is accessing, NY6 that somebody else might be accessing, are the ones that have the major things. So I would like to drill down there and look at what might be happening, as my interest is here to see what might be happening, because my backend response time, Microsoft Exchange response time, is going through peaks of high response time that is going beyond 2 seconds. So I just quickly want to go into the alarms and look at what might be happening. And of course, this image is basically telling me, yes, the backend response time is deviating, and that is the reason why Kevin's response time is deviating. And there are 2 instances in the last 2 hours where the response time has deviated beyond 2 seconds. Out of the box, the policy is 2 seconds as the threshold. You can set it to anything from 500 milliseconds to 10 seconds in order to generate alerts and do diagnostics. So the backend response time is deviating. So my Citrix is not the problem. I've eliminated Citrix out of the picture. It is the backend infrastructure. So let me go to the topology. All of this you're seeing is all auto-discovered and auto-displayed. And quickly, when I look at what is happening in the backend, I can see, as you can see here, I can see that, okay, the round trip is on an average for 24 hours is more than a second. But from the published Outlook application to the Microsoft Exchange server is where the maximum of the latency is. So let me click on this node and figure out what is happening. CPU is okay, memory is not. At the same time, when I look at the process that is taking almost a second of this overall response time, I quickly look at it and say, okay, IMAP service there is the issue, and the server is MS16 MB. So I want to quickly go to that server and figure out what might be happening in that server. And in my demo setup, the link is not working. Otherwise, I would have clicked on the link on that pop-up screen that you've seen earlier on and would have been navigated here. Quickly looking at CPU is fine, memory is pretty high, and definitely I see issues with disk I/O going up and down. Let me go to the alarms and figure out what might be happening there. So as you can see, we kind of look at alarms at errors, network services, resource response time. But I know the resources, from a resources point of view, there might be something that is happening. And yes, the RAM memory has depleted beyond 15 times 15 minutes, and disk usage is high. Disk usage is high is attracting my attention here is because the IMAP service, which is basically responsible for synchronization of the emails, uses disk a lot. So when I click on there, it basically says, okay, I've generated an alarm because I've seen the disk reads going up. I've seen few times, and these alarms are the results of correlation of the data that we get from multiple alerts that are generated. And when I look at it, bingo, I do see that disk time percentage is greater than 15%. Average disk has gone, reads and writes more than 15 seconds. And the disk percentage is greater than 70% for 6 times. And the queue length, this is a important factor because the queue length basically estimates whether it is a physical or a logical disk that are waiting, the requests that are waiting to be serviced. And an average queue length should not exceed the number of spindles. So if it is saying that it is more than 1, then it is basically saying that there are more 1.5 times than the capacity that that spindle can handle that is waiting in the queue to be serviced. And when I look at it 42 times, you can see sometimes it has gone to 2 times. So the weight of the queues in the disk for that spindle is what is slowing down, which basically means that the logical disk that has been configured for this particular server is not meeting the requirements of the load that is coming in, and as a result, the system. And one of the things I probably kind of out of curiosity, I want to look at the services, because IMAP is what I've seen. When this happens, when the queuance increases, there are chances that sometimes errors are reported back when you want to synchronize the data, and an important service, that is the IMAP service, can stop. And as you can see here, for about an hour in the last 24 hours, IMAP service is stopped and restarts itself. So when this stops and restarts is when that sluggishness that end user Kevin is experiencing, and the other person who is using the image NY6. So this is basically what I meant, being proactive when things go wrong, to be able to quickly find out and quickly eliminate. So it is not an end user's problem, it is not a network problem, it is not a silos problem, it is the backend, and in the backend it is the capacity of that particular thing based on the hour of the day, day of the week of the month, as to how the load is and how the capacity is. And if you fix that problem, the whole end user experience of not only Kevin's, but all others who are accessing the other images in that catalog will be enhanced tremendously. So this is the use case, and as I said earlier on, it is impossible for me in a short period of time of an hour to show you all the features of the product. This is the use case that we basically wanted to show you as to how you can do it. With that, I just want to basically, kind of quickly give some time for people to ask questions. And if you're intrigued by this webinar, please reach out to us and request for a personal demo. We'll be more than glad to schedule one. And here I'm taking out my CTO cap and putting on a sales cap, as my sales team asked me to kind of offer this as part of the webinar from our sales team. As a result of this webinar, if you were to request a demo and then sign up for an evaluation, and we'll provide free support during evaluation, and we will do an analysis report at the end, and after you exit, our sales team wants to acknowledge your participation with a modest gift of about $250 gift card to you.